understand every word a Brazilian says, until they start telling you a story. Suddenly it's daí, daí, daí every few seconds. And here's the strange part. Most of the time, daí doesn't mean from there, its literal meaning. So what does it actually mean? By the end of this lesson, you'll understand one of the most common words in Brazilian Portuguese, and you'll finally be able to follow Brazilian stories without getting lost. Olá pessoal! Let's start with the meaning of daí you probably already know. In its most basic form, daí is simply the combination of de plus aí. Daí, which literally means from there. And here it normally refers to place. For example, imagine you're talking to a friend on the phone and oh, you're at the park. I was there. Eu estava aí. Eu estava aí. I came from there. Eu vim daí. Eu vim daí. From there to my house is about 10 minutes. Daí até a minha casa são 10 minutos. Daí até a minha casa são 10 minutos. Simple, right? Now, in the next 30 seconds, you are going to hear one of the most common patterns in spoken Brazilian Portuguese. Daí, 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 daí. Imagine I just arrived from a trip and I'm here telling a friend about my first few minutes there. Listen carefully. O meu voo chegou às 6 horas da manhã. Daí eu fui pegar a minha mala. Daí eu perguntei para um segurança onde eu poderia pegar um táxi. Eu não entendi o que ele disse. Daí pedi para ele falar um pouco mais devagar. Did you notice something? None of those daí actually meant from there. Here, daí helps move the story forward. It's almost like the glue that connects one event to the next. Daí, daí, daí. In spoken Brazilian Portuguese, people often use daí almost like punctuation while telling a story. It's very similar to saying then, and then, or simply introducing to the next event. Let's compare. So, my flight arrived at 6 a.m., then I went to get my suitcase. O meu voo chegou às 6 horas da manhã. Daí eu fui pegar a minha mala. Daí eu fui pegar a minha mala. Then I asked a security guard where I could get a taxi. Daí eu perguntei para um segurança onde eu poderia pegar um táxi. Daí eu perguntei para um segurança onde eu poderia pegar um táxi. Yeah, so here, daí simply tells the listener, okay, here's what happened next. But that's only one job daí can do. Daí also acts as therefore, so, as in, I asked a security guard for more information. I didn't understand what he said, so I asked him to speak more slowly. Eu não entendi o que ele disse. Daí, pedi para ele falar mais devagar. Eu não entendi o que ele disse. Daí, pedi para ele falar mais devagar. Another example. He spoke more slowly, so I was able to understand him. Ele falou mais devagar. Daí, eu consegui entendê-lo. Ele falou mais devagar. Daí, eu consegui entendê-lo. So, grammatically, you could also say então, portanto, but in everyday conversation, many Brazilians naturally choose daí because it's shorter, it sounds lighter, more spontaneous and more conversational. Now comes my favorite use of daí. Imagine that out of the blue someone says,
Eu não gosto de café.
she doesn't like coffee. If I answer, e daí? E daí? Am I curious, surprised, or indifferent? The answer is indifferent. E daí can mean, so what? What about it? E daí? So you're basically saying, that doesn't really matter. Here's another example.
Eu sou mais alta que minha irmã.
She's taller than her sisterling. E daí? E daí? Be careful with this expression. Depending on your tone of voice, it can sound dismissive or even a little rude. Now, let's imagine a completely different situation. My friend starts telling me an interesting story.
Ontem encontrei um ator famoso.
Yesterday she met a famous actor. E daí? Am I as indifferent as before? No, now I'm curious. I want to hear the rest of the story. E daí? E daí?
A gente começou a conversar.
Oh, they started talking. My curiosity grows. E daí? E daí? Notice how important intonation is. Same words, but completely different emotions. So, to show indifference, say, e daí? E daí? To show curiosity, say, e daí? E daí? If you also liked this use of daí, give the lesson a like. Finally, we have three expressions that refer to what happens after a certain point. Daí em diante, daí pra frente, a partir daí. So these phrases mean from then on, from then on. Daí em diante, daí pra frente, a partir daí. So these phrases mark the point after which something starts happening regularly. For example, she started studying Portuguese in 2023. From then on, she began practicing every day. Ela começou a estudar português em 2023. Daí em diante, começou a praticar todos os dias. Or, daí pra frente, começou a praticar todos os dias. A partir daí, começou a praticar todos os dias. Now, next time you're listening to a Brazilian, count how many times they say daí. You'll be shocked. And if you want to know why Brazilians also keep saying então, então, you must watch the next video and I'll see you there.